All right, so on this week's episode, we have Josh Gessner on the podcast. Incredible story, very unique, a different type of guest. He's a pitcher in the Texas Rangers organization. He grew up in Australia, signed to play professional baseball. He takes us through his entire journey. He had a great recruiting story, recruiting journey. So if you're into pitching development or college recruiting, great episode for you that you're going to want to listen to this. So pitching development or college recruiting, any interest in either of those, listen to this episode. So here we go with Josh Gessner. All right, we now welcome on to the podcast, Josh Gessner. Josh, thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, for sure. Excited to be here.
So I always love when current players come on the podcast. I just think that there's just so much, there's different insight that you can't get anywhere else, right? As a coach, you can observe, you can do all these things, but I think just hearing a player's perspective is so valuable. And so you're currently a right-handed pitcher in the Texas Rangers organization, but you got a pretty cool background. You're doing some really cool stuff too that we'll eventually get into as well. But I don't always do this a lot, but I think your background is so unique. I think people will find it very interesting and kind of how you got to a point where you're playing professional baseball in the United States. So could you give everybody a little bit of your own background, where you grew up, kind of just how you got to the point where you're at today?
Yeah, for sure. So I started playing baseball when I was about 8 years old. I lived in Japan for 2 years. And so that's all we would do growing up. We went to school and then we'd come back and then we'd go to the park and just play baseball because that's the biggest sport over there. But then when I was about 10, we moved back to Australia, Sydney, Australia. That's where I grew up.
Okay.
And baseball isn't like the biggest sport over there, but there's like club teams and everything. So I just played that all throughout, and I played that until I was about 16. Then I looked at myself and was like, okay, like, do I want to take the next step in baseball? And do I want to go play at either like a college level or like a professional level? And so at that time, I was a shortstop trying to like pitch a little bit, and I was throwing about, like 78, 80 miles an hour. And so I kind of looked at myself. I was like, like this isn't good enough to go and play at a D1 level, professional level, like levels that I aspire to be at.
And you're in
Because
Australia right now when you're having this conversation with yourself.
yes, I was in Sydney, Australia.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I basically just looked at it. I was like, all right, I want to make a commitment to try to get to at least a college level in the US. And so my development journey kind of began where I was like, all right, like, what's the one thing that I really need to improve? It's pitching velocity. Okay, so what do I need to do to increase pitching velocity? So I'll look up on the internet, like, all these resources. At the time, it was like DriveLine baseball, a little bit of Tread Athletics, all these places, and I'll just try out everything. And one thing that I did do was that I flew into Seattle, Washington, and I went to DriveLine for about 6 months. Yeah, like by myself as a 16-year-old.
What your parents were just like, how did school work and everything with that then?
Yeah, at the time I was yeah, I didn't care too much about school. Like I was a very good test taker, so like I didn't really have to like study too much. And so like I would just have to do my tests like online or like um when I came back. But I really didn't place a huge importance on the school at the time, especially as a 16-year-old, like um in Australia it's kind of weird, like the school system, the only thing that matters is your senior year. So whatever grade you get in your senior year is like the reflection of your whole high school.
Wow.
Yeah. So pretty much you just get a GPA in senior year, and that's what like all the universities look at. You get like a score out of 99.95, and that's kind of what all the universities look at.
Wow. So you could literally just do nothing until your senior year and then just lock in and then you're good to go for US universities.
Yeah, 100%. That's pretty much what I did. It was like I did pretty much nothing until like the last like 4 months of school, and I just absolutely just crammed everything, memorized all the essays and everything, and then I got a pretty decent score, so I was like eligible to go to like most universities. I also got a pretty decent SAT score as well, so
What'd you
that
get?
really helped. My SAT, my first one was I think 1280 or something, but then I retook it and I got a 1420,
Yeah,
and so
you're smart.
yeah, no, yeah, that helped a lot. It opened up so many opportunities, especially in the college, um, like the recruiting process. So yeah, but in school, I really didn't care about even as a 16-year-old. I was just like, yeah, I'm sorry guys, I'm going, like I'm skipping like 5 months of school. Like there's really nothing you can do about it. I'm pursuing my career and my dream. So and the school was like, all right, okay, you know.
Man, I
Um,
wish I would have grew up in Sydney, Australia. Gee.
I know. It's when I hear about like the US school system and how you like the GPA is dependent on all of your years, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, like
yeah.
I'm like, damn, that's kind of stressful. You need to be locked in for every single year of high school.
Right, I know. Yeah, I know. I'm telling.
Yeah.
So you went to DriveLine. You're 16, 17 years old. You're throwing 80 miles an hour, 70, 80 miles an hour when you go there. I mean, you're in professional baseball right now. So, and you got, this is your sixth season. So obviously something happened because you weren't getting signed throwing 80 miles an hour. So what happened?
Yeah, so basically, I was 78, 80, and then I was still in Sydney, Australia. But I before I went to DriveLine, I took about 6 months off to just train. I didn't even play games or anything. I just followed the DriveLine velocity program.
Mhm.
So I'd just do like pull downs on the weekends and then plyo velos in the middle of the week. And then I would lift and try to eat as much as I can to gain weight. And so that got me to about, 85 to 87, just
Okay.
from like, growing up, getting bigger, like actually throwing on like a consistent basis and following a good program. But yeah, the big jump came when I went to DriveLine and I was just around like a bunch of guys who threw way harder than me. Everyone seemed like they were throwing 90 plus. And I even lived in a house with like 10 other guys. Um, and all we would do was like watch YouTube videos on like how to improve mechanics and like how to gain velocity. And like at the time, the Tread Athletics had like videos of like 1 hour videos on one specific part of the pitching mechanics, and so we'll just binge watch that. And yeah, we're just kind of obsessed about it. We'll do velo days. We'll compete with each other, like plyo velos, pull downs. And yeah, I think that environment really helped me in getting to like the 90 mile an hour mark.
So how hard were you throwing when you left DriveLine?
So when I first left, I was topping 91.
You went from 80 to 91 in 6 month period.
It was probably so like 6 months in Sydney, and then I had more time at DriveLine. So it was probably like a year.
Oh, so you went to DriveLine, then came back to Sydney, and then went back to DriveLine?
Yeah, I went there twice. Yeah.
Went there twice.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, how old are you when you're at this point?
18.
18.
So when
Okay.
I was throwing about 90, 91, 92, I was probably it was when I just turned 18.
Okay, so you want to get recruited to play college baseball. How does that happen if you're in Sydney, Australia?
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. Honestly, what happened with me was that I was in DriveLine, and then I got a video of my bullpen where I was, 90, 91. The funny thing is, I don't throw a single strike in the video. Like the thing is set up. There's like a nine pocket,
Uh-huh.
um, and I don't hit it once. Yeah. So I get that video and I basically just mass send it to everyone, just like cold emails to every single coach I could think of. Um, and I was hoping for like at least like I sent out like 100 plus, at least like 10 responses or something like that. but I didn't get a single email back. I think
Not one.
because not one, no. Um, I think because, maybe because I didn't throw a single strike, and it's like a kid from Australia, like what are we gonna do with this kid, you know? Um, but one thing that did happen was the college at UW, University of Washington, he was really close to Ryan Roland Smith. He's a guy who runs a travel ball team called Next Gen Baseball in Sydney, Australia. And so he kind of got in touch with Ryan and was like, hey, do you know this kid? Like, he looks a little bit interesting. Um, and so Ryan got in touch with me and it was like, hey, do you want to come on this travel ball team? We're going to go to Arizona and showcase. And I was like, yeah, for sure. And that's kind of where my recruiting process really started to take off.
So you didn't know about this travel team in Sydney? Like, were you not on? Was that not a big thing over there, or like how did you not even have heard of this travel organization?
Yeah, it's really not even a big thing, and it's like extremely expensive to do these things. So it wasn't really on my radar. I was kind of just hoping for the video to get me like at least a couple offers, and then I can go and play college baseball. But it's tough for Australians, man. Like these travel teams, like they cost a lot because flights alone cost 2 grand, and then they got to get you into showcases and stuff like that. So it's not a very easy thing to do, and it wasn't really on my radar until Ryan actually contacted me at the time.
So you came over here with that travel organization. What, by the way, what's the name of the travel organization again?
It's called Next Gen Baseball.
Next Gen.
Yeah.
Next Gen. So you came over here with Next Gen. I assume to Arizona, pitched is that where you started to get some looks for recruiting?
Yeah, so what happened was I was able to get into a game called the Arizona Fall Classic Academic Game,
Okay.
and I think it's just for like kids who got an SAT score of over, like, I don't know what it was. There was a requirement. I think it was like 12, 1300. And yeah, at that showcase, there were just like 100 plus scouts. There's so many scouts there. And at that showcase, I was 91 to 94. And so, um, yeah, that kind of just like supercharged my recruiting process, and like the interest really started to roll in.
What were some of the schools that offered you?
I got an offer from pretty much every single Pac-12, all of a lot of mid majors, and not as many on the East Coast just because I was showcasing in Arizona and it was tough for people to come over. But I was talking to some East Coast schools as well. But it was a little bit tough because I was a senior at the time when I was showcasing. And so a lot of these schools have their scholarship money already
Mm.
um, distributed. Like they already have their classes filled up. So um, that was a little bit difficult. But yeah, my dream school was Stanford, and I got an offer from them. So I was pretty happy about that as well.
So did you end up committing to Stanford then?
No, so what happened was I got all the offers and I had to like have a look at all the scholarships and everything. And what I ended up deciding was committing to a school called Tulane University. Um, they're a mid-major, and I thought, like scholarship wise, it was a really good situation. As an Australian kid, it's extremely, extremely expensive to come over to the US and play college. So scholarship was a big factor in that. And like if I was only getting 50%, I would have had to take out student loans and stuff like that. And it's not as easy for a foreign student. So I ended up committing there. They had like a really good opportunity for me. But what happened was like the coaches all left. Recruiting coordinator left, and the head coach, I think, left there as well. So there was something that happened there where maybe I would have had to change commitments or something. But when that all was happening, I decided to sign with the Philadelphia Phillies, so I didn't have to worry about it.
Oh, so how does that work then? So you were committed to Lane, and then throughout this process, you have professional organizations saying like, hey, if you want to at any time, like we'll sign you? Or was it like, hey, once you saw everybody from Tulane leave the coaching staff, you're like, oh, I need to start throwing in front of some coaches, or maybe I need to start informing them I'm willing to sign? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, so the professional side was a little bit behind the scenes. When I started getting a lot of interest, I got in touch with an agent, and so I was with Octagon, um, and he was kind of working behind the scenes, and he was talking to the professional scouts and everything like that. And basically, how it happened was I'd already gotten some interest and like a couple offers, but it wasn't something that I was willing to take. And so I told my agent that, okay, like if these conditions are met, then I'm definitely willing to go the professional route. And so the agent was like, okay, sweet. And he was working behind the scenes to try to get that going. And it happened to be just as I had like been in the recruiting process that they got it settled and the Philadelphia Phillies agreed to the terms. And then, yeah, I pretty much signed with them.
What advice would you give to a younger Josh out there who, obviously I'm sure you probably don't have maybe any regrets yourself in terms of signing professional baseball versus playing in college, but now that you've been in professional baseball for, Jesus, your sixth season, right? You have a lot of experience now, and we'll talk about some of the different things you've experienced, but what advice would you give to a younger version of somebody in a similar situation, knowing what you know about professional baseball? Like, would you recommend a high school player sign? What would you say?
Yeah, it's a tough one because you can always look at the other side and be like, damn, I should have done that. I'd be lying if I was like, damn, like what would have happened if I had gone the D1 route and shoved. Just like Travis Bazana's doing right now, he's a good friend, and he went the Oregon State route and he's just killing it. And he might even go 1-1 this year. So I'm not saying that I could have done that, but there's always a different side to everything. But something that I would say is I think you just got to really know yourself and be like, if you're a guy who can go to a foreign country and like have confidence and just compete as soon as you get to the US, then maybe the college route would be good because if you just go in and compete and just shove, then you can get a lot more money than what you could at the international level. But if you feel like you really need to develop and you need to adjust to the country and you're not as confident in just like coming in and shoving, then maybe the professional route might be a little bit better because you get a lot more leeway. They're gonna give you a lot of time to develop. They're gonna give you time, especially as an 18-year-old. They're not gonna just cut you as soon as you come in. They're gonna give you a couple years to really develop and get used to the used to playing in the US and stuff like that. So um, yeah, there's no right or wrong answer, I feel like, but it's kind of just coming back to just knowing yourself and what you believe to be like what you think you're capable of.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen, experienced, and just seen too. I think from a development standpoint, I don't think there's any comparison. I think it's professional baseball, and that's just simply because of just the amount of games. You not don't have classes. Like it's just baseball 24/7. And so I think from a development standpoint, it's definitely professional baseball. My question to you is, sometimes I'll get questions about like college scholarships for players who sign. Like, are you still planning on eventually getting your degree, or have you started taking classes? Like, how does that work um, once you sign out of high school?
Yeah, for sure. I think so with my contract, I have 4 years of university paid for. Um, and I think the big thing is just telling teams that you're committed to getting an education because it's pretty easy for them to include the education money in there. It's not like straight cash. I've seen teams give out like 400K in education money, and then the guy gets like a $20,000 signing bonus. So if you really tell them this is what I value and I really value getting an education, then it's not hard for teams to give you that. I think it's just emphasizing that point.
So for you, is it set up where you can go to any college you get into?
Yeah. So what happened was after the Tulane coaches left and everything, um, I was hoping maybe I could go to Stanford because they had already offered me. And so that's what I told them. And they said, all right, we'll just give you 4 years of Stanford paid. So education, living, and that was part of my contract right there.
Wow. So at any point after your career's done, you're going to be able to go to Stanford and not have to pay anything.
Yeah, and I could, yeah, I could go to any school. Um, Stanford, I don't know if I'd have to go through like the application process again, but um, yeah, it's just education money. You can use it like honestly anywhere. I've even heard of players like Australian players using it for Australian universities, and so it's very yeah, you can use it wherever as long as it's education.
Right. It's interesting. Let's talk a little bit about your experience in professional baseball, right? So you're signed, you're only 18 years old. What's the transition like from a player standpoint? Like was there certain things that you looking back like you needed to spend more time on and prepare versus others? Like what was the experience like those first couple years of professional baseball?
Yeah, I had a pretty rough time. Mostly because I got the yips at that time. So
Got the
I don't
yips.
know. Yeah, I got the yips really, really bad. It's one of the worst cases I've seen.
Really?
Yeah. So what was kind of happening was I came over to the US and I'd never been really confident with PFPs because like it's kind of weird as a pitcher where you're going max effort and then you get it and then you like trying to throw to a base and it's weird. If you're a pitcher, you know what I mean. Um, so I wasn't really confident with that. And then so like getting into professional baseball, we were like, doing PFPs every day. And my like I couldn't really do them very well. And so that kind of just spiraled and spiraled and my PFPs just kept getting worse. And then it kind of got came into my throwing program. I wasn't able to play catch. I would just spike it or just, like spike it or sail it every throw. Um, the funny thing is though, I could pitch. And when I in 2019 when I first signed, I could pitch, but I couldn't play catch or do PAPs.
That's
um,
that's weird.
yeah, it was definitely weird, but yeah, it was definitely one of the toughest times in my baseball career because I would just dread going to the field every day. I'd be like, Jesus, like I don't want to play catch, like I don't want to go do PAPs because as an 18-year-old and like you're around your teammates, you don't want to humiliate yourself and um it kind of just felt like I was just like the worst player in the whole organization. And
Mm.
so like the anxiety was up. Like I was I wasn't depressed or anything, but I was definitely in a very negative mind space. And so my first year of Pro Bowl was definitely a grind.
Man, I tell you what, I've always been somebody who's always thought PFPs were a complete waste of time to practice, and you're just justifying that right here, right now. Like we're blaming that for you getting the yips. So yes, we need to ban PFPs. What is something that helped you get over the yips? Because obviously, there's players out there. I've worked with players who have had the yips, in every situation, it seems like it's a little different how they get it. It seems that you're the big fear is, what someone else may think of you, or there'll be a coach or player, just something like that. What helped you? Like what was that whole process like?
Yeah, it was a long process. It was kind of weird for me. So my initial spout of the yips was what we just talked about, like the PFPs, the play catch. Um, but then I got it like for real in 2021 when I was throwing a live BP. And I was throwing really hard at that time. That was probably the hardest I'd ever been throwing. I was up to 98, 99.
Whew.
And yeah, and I was doing a live BP in Sydney, Australia, getting ready for the ABL, the Australian Baseball League. and I absolutely drilled someone in the head at like, mid 90s. And yeah, it was like a big thing. Everyone was like, Jesus, like, are you okay? Like, he had to go to the hospital and everything, and it was fine. Um, but I think that kind of left some trauma into my head of like, damn, like I don't want to do that again, you know? And so every time I would pitch after that, when a right-handed hitter would step in, I would be like, subconsciously, I'd be like, all right, I can't hit him. So I'd try to throw it away from the hitter, and then I'd just yank it like way over into the left-handed batter's box. And um, that was when I really got it. That was like, all right, I can't play catch, I can't do PFPs, and I can't pitch. So that's when I had it for real. But yeah, the whole process of getting over it is, for me, it was definitely mostly mental, and it was really getting to know my fears.
Mm.
And so I believe that the yips are just rooted in fear. It's fear and anxiety. And so I would journal every day and be like, all right, what am I exactly scared of? Okay, so I'm scared of hitting the right-handed hitter. Like, why? Because if I hit him, then it's gonna hurt him, and everyone's gonna think I'm a dickhead for like hitting him, and But then it's like what? Why do you think that? Like, is that true? And then you like keep digging in, and it kind of came back to um, I cared way too much about what people thought of me, and that was like the big root cause for me. Um, and so once I identified that root cause, I could go about like trying to fix that, and that's a whole journey in of itself. I would at that time I just started obsessing about like psychology, like David Goggins, like going on that whole thing of like what anyone thinks of me, like uh, going on that DGAF mode, and um, I would go and play catch, and like I would look the catch partner in his eyes and think like me, and like I would like I would throw bad throws on purpose, like I'll just sail it on purpose, and then be like, yep, that wasn't too bad, like I don't care, so it was kind of just like a whole process of desensitizing myself to what people thought of me. And ultimately, that's really what helped me get over it.
Wow. It's very interesting. So you would be playing, you'd be playing catch with somebody, and then you would purposely overthrow them.
Yeah, and that's a massive one. Like that's one of the biggest things that helped me, because one, it like teaches you to just not care about throwing, like making a bad throw. And then after you make a bad throw, you kind of just analyze and be like, well, that wasn't that bad. Like it's not like such a terrifying thing to make a bad throw. Um, and when you're sailing it, your arm is like working smoothly as well. When you have the yips, like you get so tense, and like it feels so tight, and then so like it feels very like mechanical and robotic. But when you're like purposely sailing it, your arm and body is moving nicely, and like you don't care where it goes, so like your mind is free. And so yeah, that was actually a really big thing. I did that a lot in 2021, just sailing it over my catch partner's head.
And he didn't know it. He didn't know.
Yeah, no, they didn't know. Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty funny. That's pretty
Hmm.
funny. So do you still journal to this day? I mean, I guess I think that's what's kind of cool about it is you're still pitching. I mean, right now, like you're in season, yet you're still okay with talking about the yips, even though you're playing right now. Eh, Like, do you still have things you do on a regular basis to ensure that those things don't come back?
Yeah, it's a really tough thing, the yips, because I feel like it just never goes away. It's more of like you need to suppress it. And so um yeah, I feel it even to this day. Sometimes I even start getting nervous when I go play catch if I haven't played catch in a while, because it's like trauma. It's like trauma to your brain, and like that never really it doesn't just go away like that. So Yeah, I still journal when I feel like, those fears are rising and like the anxiety coming up. I think journaling and really getting to the root cause of why. Um, I still do that to this day. And I still work on like, like not caring as much about what other people think. I always remind myself of the spotlight effect, which is like um, where it feels like everyone's watching you,
Mm.
but in reality, everyone's just thinking about themselves. Like they don't really, they're thinking about themselves, So it might seem like everyone's watching you and judging you all the time, but in reality, no one cares. So um, just go to you, and that's something that I remind myself on a daily basis.
That's good stuff, man. Really good stuff. So yeah, if anyone out there ever sees Josh pitch and he just out of nowhere just overthrows somebody, whether it be the catcher or his partner, just know it was on purpose. It was on purpose. He was doing it on purpose. That's good,
Yeah,
man.
all of them are on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. All of them in game, it doesn't matter. All of them.
Yeah.
Um, no, I appreciate you sharing that because I think that's something that so many people struggle with that, and they're not at a place where you are, where they're okay with sharing it, talking about it, your own experience. So I think I think it's great, man. I think you sharing that today is going to help out a lot of people. So I think that's including myself. So I think that's good. I really appreciate you doing that. When it comes to like actual pitching in game, like, what are some of the things that you have found that has made you successful when you've pitched well in professional baseball? And then, like, what are some of the things that, man, you've done and it's made you unsuccessful, if that makes sense?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm one of those pitchers who, when I get into a bullpen, I can throw like 80 to 90% strikes. I can just dot up. But I struggle sometimes when I get into game. And so the biggest thing that I found when I've been my best is that I need to simplify everything. So what I find when I'm really struggling is that I'm thinking about too many things at once. Um, and so like I'd be thinking about, okay, where my arm needs to be and like what I need to feel when I'm throwing the ball. But when I can really simplify it and have just one cue on each pitch. So for example, on a fastball, I'm just thinking, all right, fingers to the target as hard as I can. Or like when I'm throwing a slider, I'm going like, all right, I'm throwing it right at the right-handed hitter as hard as I can.
Mm.
And so when I can really simplify it, that's when I'm at my best. I have a tendency to overthink, so it is that's one of the challenges. But throwing is such a complex motion that you can't really just like think your way into throwing. Yeah, it's a very subconscious thing. So if you can simplify it and just have one cue, that's what I found when I'm doing my best.
Does that ever help you if you're starting to feel yourself like the yips kind of come about where you just tell yourself, hey, just throw it as hard as you can? Like, does that help at all?
Yeah, for me, it's just like I've kind of developed this cue um, where I just say, that's my cue, and it's such a simple cue, but I thought about it so much, like to the point of like like I'm thinking about, all right, everyone doesn't care about me. I'm thinking about spotlight effect. Thought about it all, and then at the bottom is like, so um, I feel like if you can come up with a cue that helps you like that, like a very simple cue, but there's lots of thought behind it, and you've already thought through it, and it means a lot to you, then that cue can really help. And for me, it's what, I can just say like, my body kind of just releases, and I can just throw normally.
Mm, I like that. I like that. What do you think about some of the training facilities that you've been at? Like when you come talk about DriveLine, you talk about Tread Athletics. You're somebody who's constantly learning. Like, what are some of the things that you've taken away from going to some of these facilities as a pitcher?
Yeah, I've been to a lot of facilities. I've been to Driveline Baseball, and then I've been to a bunch in Arizona because I love Arizona. I usually stay here in the off season. I've also went to Tread. And I think the biggest thing is really just having a good relationship with the coach. It's not as much about the facility, it's more about the relationship with your coach. And I found that when I'm really comfortable with my coach and we're gelling well, that's when I get the biggest gains. It's not so much about like how big the facility is or like how many resources they have. It's really just been like, all right, I have a coach that really believes in me and is open to ideas and um yeah, like those kind of guys are the guys who have really like helped me in my career. It hasn't really been too much about like the facilities.
So it seems like it's not so much about what the X's and O's, right? So much for like from a coaching standpoint, that it's more so just been about like a coach who just cares about you.
Yeah, and I think that's just such an underrated aspect. Like players need someone that they can talk to. Like the season, especially like if you're a minor leaguer, like the minor league season is tough. Like I'm sure it's the same with like high school and college, but like programs are nice, throwing programs, lifting programs are nice, but like just having someone that believes in you and someone you can talk to is really, really underrated in my opinion. And I think it's like even more important than the programs.
How often will you talk to your coaches?
Um, Probably I try to do it for right now, like I have a guy in the mental skills department who I'm really close with, and I try to talk to him like once a week. Um, but as soon as things get tough, the frequency will probably ramp up. um, but yeah, I think like at least once a week, talking to someone that you really trust and someone that believes in you, and yeah, just having like a good support network is super super important.
One of the cool things I think about you that makes you unique is, you have some interests outside of baseball too, and you do some things that are pretty cool. So one of the things that I've seen you do is, you're on Twitter and you write some really incredible threads. I think one of the threads recently, just this past week, I think 9.6 or 9.7 million people saw it. So it's really good stuff. What got you into the writing? I know you have your own newsletter too. We'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes, but what made you kind of want to get involved with some of the social media creative writing?
Yeah, so at the very start, I started, I think in October of last year. And so honestly, there was no like um yeah, when I first started, it was pretty much just so like I could write down what I learned in the day. So like I read a lot and like I watch a lot of videos and stuff. And so the best way to learn something is to teach it. And so that's kind of what I was doing. I would consume information from books and videos, and I would write my notes on like what I learned, and then I would try to explain it to um, like an audience. Even though at the time I didn't have one, I would try to write down what I learned. Um, and I got that from it's called the Feynman technique. And he said the best way to learn it's from Richard Feynman, he's a physicist back in the day, but he said the best way to learn something is to consume, think about it, and try to explain it to a 5-year old.
Mm.
And if you're able to do that, then that means that you've learned something successfully. So that's kind of what I did. I just, whatever I consumed, I just tried to distill it into a thread or a tweet. And then that's kind of what I started doing. But then as time went on, I started to write a little bit more about my journey and trying to help. Um, Honestly, I was writing to my younger self. So
Mm.
like I was younger, I was writing to like my 16 to 18-year-old self. I know how hard of a time that was for me. And so I'll just say if there's anyone out there that could really gain value from, what I write, and I try to make it as actionable as possible, like gaining velo, getting over the yips, getting recruited, and stuff like that. Yeah, I was just trying to impact someone who was in similar shoes to me when I was at that age.
That's good. That's phenomenal. You're doing a great job. So I will, like I said, we'll put all those links in the show notes. If somebody wants to follow you online, like where should they go?
Yeah, for right now, just Twitter, Josh Gessner, or the username is at Gessner Josh. So yeah, you can follow me there. You can message me, and I try my best to answer all of my DMs. So
And another thing that you just started doing recently is, you have a podcast too. You do have a podcast with a good friend of the show, Jared Gaynor. And so it's the Mound Visit podcast is the name of the podcast, the Mound Visit podcast. And it's phenomenal. It's all pitching. So if you're somebody who loves pitching, coaching, playing, whatever, check out the podcast. It's really good stuff. You and Jared do a great job. Spend a lot of time preparing for that, and it's I've learned a lot myself just by listening. So check out the Mound Visit podcast. So Josh, appreciate you for coming on the show today, man.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you.